Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to spend a few words talking about the KZ ZSX. If you watched my earlier video, I got this one earlier in the week. I spent a bunch of time listening to it, bringing it in for a little bit, swapping cables. Lots of time on this guy, just in a few days. So not super crazy review, but I just wanted to talk about some things I noticed, especially because while I was waiting for this guy to come in the mail, I was reading other reviews and what other people were having to say about it. So when I finally got it, I wanted to see, well, is all that stuff true? Is that someone's perception of it? Whatever. So I'll give you my perception of it anyway. But so first, thank you to the INU audio store and Amazon for shipping that out quickly and getting it to me this week. Still $53.99 on their store, which is probably $1 cheaper than I think the other ones are. I think some other people had it for $59 minus $5, maybe. Maybe it's a penny cheaper. It's no coupon. They just have it for $53.99, which is kind of a good deal if you want it quickly from Amazon, if you want it in the next day or two. So thank you to those guys. Second, thank you to Android.net, who published a chart on Reddit that I ran across. So I didn't really use this with their permission, but thank you guys for putting that up there and doing this. So, on paper, people look at the ZSX and say, well, it's got another driver. That's true. No one was really sure how that was going to affect anything, but sometimes more is better, sometimes not. And then a bunch of graphs like this one started showing up, which basically says this is the ZSX versus the ZS10 Pro. And so, you follow my finger, it's pretty much the same, like all the bass through the mids, all that stuff is basically the same, right up until, it starts to deviate just a tiny bit. But, sort of the biggest difference is what people have been calling out as this 7K. And from about 7K on, it sort of diverges a little bit from the ZS10 Pro, and people will say, yeah, that's sort of the new KZ treble, what's new in the ZSX versus what was in the ZS10. So now we've got much higher levels for going through the frequency range towards the end. So what does that actually mean? The 7K, less sibilance. That's sort of low treble, so maybe a little less sibilance if you're sensitive to that. I'm actually not, I think. I've been trying to find songs with a lot of sibilance, and I think a little sibilance deaf, I think. I just don't notice it as much as other people where it drives them absolutely nuts. But sibilance and fatiguing treble, right? That's sort of what they're trying to address there. And some people had that issue with the ZS10 Pro. I thought it was actually pretty good at EDM and deadmau5 and other sort of hard-hitting electronic things that pound into your head. I actually didn't think it was all that bad. So when I kind of looked at this chart, I said, well, it's not a whole lot different than the ZS10 Pro, and a lot of the reviews kind of said the same thing. They kind of look at it and say, well, it's about a ZS10 Pro with a better treble, and maybe the bass is a little tighter, more fine, but I think that's just kind of a burn-in. You just haven't spent a ton of hours on it yet because it's still a little tight. But yeah, in general, the graphs weren't like, I really need to go buy this thing. So then I went to his website, and he had his first impression of it was feels nicer at $50. Yeah, I'll go with that. Tuning is balanced and surprisingly well done. I think that is absolutely true, and I think that's part of why you can't always trust the graph. I don't think it really reflects how good the tuning really is on the ZSX, and we'll kind of get to that after this. Slightly hot treble, yeah, maybe. Bass is warm and lacks definition, and I think that is pretty much showing you what the ZS10, I think you would say the same exact thing. lots of bass, but it always lacks the actual definition compared to some higher end things, and that's fine. So it says generally it's well tuned and similar sounding to the Solaris and the Z1R, but much worse technicalities. So kind of an interesting statement right there. You're saying it's well tuned and sounds similar to a couple, $1,000 IEMs. So I was like, wow, okay. He was kind of hearing what I was hearing there, because it sounds pretty amazing to me. And I was kind of surprised to see someone say that. Most people just are more reserved and said, hey, it just sounds like a better ZS10 Pro. But I do think this one kind of punches above its weight. I think it's really good. And he was surprised by the effort by KZ. So, true. I'll give him that. So out of the box, I think the ZSX sounds a whole lot like the ZS10 Pro. And I think out of the box with the stock cable, I think it pretty much looks like the graph. It's kind of a ZS10 Pro with some, not so much, people talk about the treble, how did it really change? And I saw some people throw out, there's tons of micro details, and maybe the detail recovery is higher. I'm not really sure you're getting any more details than a ZS10 Pro. I think the ZS10 Pro was, for its money, I think that was pretty damn good at details. On the other side of it, I think you're getting where people said that the treble was steely on the ZS10 Pros. I think that's sort of what was being addressed, and I would call it texture. I think when you get into those really high notes, I think there's just more there. There's more body to it than hitting a piece of steel like this, where you just get this super dull, flat sound. So I think that was kind of the major difference there. But so I thought that was cool. What I didn't do at first was I didn't change the cable. I was using the stock cable, and then kind of in the mail, I got more of these nice HCK 16 core coppers. And I have one of these actually on my ZS10 Pro, and I've always had it on there. Then I got these mail, like, okay, well, let me see what happens when we put that cable on these guys. And it's a totally different beast. The bass goes from the stock cable, it's pretty much like what the graph says. It's exactly like the ZS10 Pro. Put the copper cable on, and it's almost a TFZ number 3. And I'll kind of go back to what he says here. It's basically the same sound with worse technicalities. It's a TFZ number 3 monster bass head thing without all the definition of the TFZ, if that kind of makes sense. So this thing will shake your head. You'll feel the bass in the back of your neck. But when you hear a kick drum, it's not exactly a kick drum. It's kind of like, I recognize that as a kick drum, but sort of that transparency of it sounds exactly like a kick drum, that I don't. I think that's sort of the ZS10 Pro kind of poking through. It's but on the other hand, there's a whole lot of extra bass when you use this copper cable, and I can't figure out why that is. At first I thought it was just my V30. I thought this thing had some weird interaction with the copper cable and it was doing something different. But then I played this on my S10 Plus, and it's the same thing. It's a totally different earphone. There's so much more bass with this copper cable. It's startling how different it is. It's not slightly different, like you're not going to mistake the two. It's like totally different. And maybe that's just me, because I haven't really read anyone else say that, but I also haven't heard too many people who've tried different cables on it. I think everyone got it out of the box and tried it, and then you end up with something that sounds like that graph. But wow, I was blown away last night how much bass was actually coming out of these things. And like some songs like Morchiba, like if you've ever tried some of those test tracks, let me see if I could run through some of these songs that I was doing last night. So First Impression before I actually had them and read the reviews, male voices, right? Everyone says the male voices are thin, maybe slightly recessed. Copper cable, not an issue anymore. So Prince's When Doves Cry, that is a song that's, I mean, Prince in general I've picked out a few times because his voice doesn't sound right when the mids are recessed, or when you get a bit thin, his voice, he has kind of a thin voice to begin with, and then you have it go through your earphones and it's even thinner. It sounds like Prince, but not actually not Prince. Copper cable, that was Prince. Probably one of my favorite earphones to listen to Prince on. Probably the only one that actually sounded right in that price range anyway. So Ambitions as a Rider by Tupac, ear-shaking song. And I think this is actually the Bad Guy, good reviews. This is his playlist that he showed one day, and I'm like, hey, that's cool, and I'll go through and make the same playlists. So Aerosmith's No More No More, I actually don't like that song. I'm not sure it's this version or what. He digs it for the piano. I just don't like that. I don't like that song at all. Melissa's like kind of your classic male rock song, kind of 70s style. Guitar sounds great. Can't Find My Way Home, I'll put that in the same category. Just an amazing, iconic song. Sounds amazing, male voice. And I think almost everything on here is a male voice, surprisingly. I don't think that was intentional, but after so many people were talking about it, I'm like, I just kept on going through these songs, and I'm like, oh, it's Boston, Foreplay Long Time. Totally iconic song. Sounds perfect. Sounds great. Then you get to EPMD, and it's like, oh yeah, this thing is absolute. This guy's got an iconic voice, super deep voice, but the bass is just absolutely kicking on that thing. Much different than the stock cable. Totally different. Operator's kind of a slower male song. Kendrick Lamar songs. He does What Is and What Should Never Be, if you're into sibilants, and the number of S's in the first kind of opening verse is pretty amazing. Not too keen on that particular version of it, though. Freebird, Can't You See, another kind of 70s style. Paradise, Meatloaf, Ozzy Osbourne's I Don't Know, it's a good song. The Police, another iconic male voice right there with Sting. So I kind of went through this whole playlist and then tried to find a better version of the Led Zeppelin song. All crazy male voices. I just don't notice. I didn't really hear what anyone else was hearing. So I got another playlist, more test tracks. So Learning the Blues, there's a very strong horn right in the beginning. Not shouty at all, sounds kind of pretty natural to me. Diana Krall, that song, again, another one that had sibilants that I was kind of looking for, and I think I just don't hear it, but if you want to hear someone, a female singer in a lower range, great song right there. Hot for Teachers got like the crazy drum solo in the beginning, if you want to bang your head and see how much you can tolerate. That was good. Dream Theaters, I don't remember what was going on in that one. I think that was Micro Details. So then you get to Woman in Chains and Blindfold by Morcheeba. If you want to test your bass, see how far you can push your earphones, two pretty good, without hearing like an actual bass to the instrument, but bass in your head. Teardrop, kind of the same. I put that in the same boat as those three. Roads by Portishead, I thought that was sort of where the ZSX had an issue. That particular song, right in the beginning, has got some key presses, like some long, drawn-out notes. I'm not entirely sure what that song is supposed to sound like, but it didn't sound all that good to me. Maybe that's just the way it was recorded. Maybe it's that version. Maybe I just don't know what I'm talking about. But wasn't too keen on those really long notes sounding as consistent as they should have been. So I Want You Back by Michael Jackson, the Jackson 5, kind of a soundstage / instrument separation song. It's pretty good. Uh, Under the Milky Way, another iconic male voice song. So I was going through all those, and I never really saw what a lot of other people were saying, especially with this copper cable. But so in general, so let me go through my first impression of how this has actually changed. So copper cable, tons of bass. In the mids, stock cable, yeah, the mids are going to be a bit thin. Throw the copper cable on it and everything fills out. So all the mids got the weight that they should and the full range that they should. It's totally different. So I don't really see where that same issue with the mids. I think it sounds great. And then with female voices riding on kind of the improved treble, those, I don't know if they sound better. I think they sound fine. But I thought they sounded, especially female voices, sounded pretty good on the ZS10 Pro. I mean, I didn't really have an issue there. And then so the treble, like I said, I don't think that there's tons of new detail there. I'm not sure that technically it's much better than the ZS10 Pro, but sort of what changed is I think it's a lot more tolerable on more electronic and more dance music. And the ZS10 Pro was actually really good at it too, but I think this is even better. And you know, if you listen to Deadmau5 or something like that, and you listen to something, I think there was a song on Mousetrap called House of God by I.O. So if you listen to that build up to the drop, it gets a bit painful because the music is just rising and rising and rising, and then it'll drop. But if you can make it through the peak, your earphones are doing pretty good. So I think the bigger change that people had talked about was the soundstage. And some people said, well, now it's much wider, now it's much deeper, it's wider than deep, deeper than wide. I'm not sure I bought any of that. I think it's pretty much the same as the ZS10 Pro. What changed is the instrument separation, and I think it's amazing. It's a natural, it doesn't present artificially wide. When you hear some songs, like even when Doves Cry by Prince, I heard some things that I've never heard before, and I've heard the song, thousands of times. But there's definitely something going on with either the new drive or the new tuning, or maybe it's the treble extension. Something changed, so instruments are super separated, and it makes it really enjoyable to listen to, especially that soundtrack on some older 1970s style classic rock. Wow, all the instruments separated, amazing. So that was kind of my surprise of my ZSX First Impression was a lot of the things on the chart don't really point to much of a difference, but throw the copper cable on and listen to how all these small changes affect, your whole music presentation. I think it's actually quite different. More than these small changes, an extended treble and a new driver and some new tuning. You're not really sure how all that combines into, one cohesive system, but, I think he was right. I think he kind of nailed it right on the head. The tuning is super balanced and surprisingly well. And my first impression is that pretty much nailed it. Does it sound like $1,000 pair? I don't know. It actually sounded a lot like my TFZs. When you throw in the bass, they sounded surprisingly the same. And like I said, where it doesn't sound the same are what he mentioned, the technicalities of it. When you hear a kick drum, it sounds kind of like a kick drum, but not like the TFZ sound like a kick drum. So yeah, I think some of the definition and the detail, you're always going to get more of that and better when you spend more money. But holy cow, for $50, these are doing pretty good. I mean, not too many people seem to have been super impressed with it. Everyone says it's really good, but I think you guys should give this one a shot. And like I said, definitely change the cable. Try some of your favorite cables from your other IMs and see what's going on, because I think the stock cable either isn't working well with this set, or it's just kind of outlived its usefulness and they need to get a better cable to take advantage of what's new in here, but something's going on. So that's my first impression, and I'll probably post something longer later on, but I just kind of wanted to get that out because I spent a lot of time with it over the past couple days. I wanted to get that out of my head before I move on to a more detailed review. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.